born to destroy worlds. Her beast was broken by a human's gentle touch asterisk. The crimson dawn broke over the mining colony of Kepler 442b. But today, the sky carried more than just the light of a distant star. Commander Elena Voss stood at the observation deck of mining station Prometheus, her weathered hands gripping the metal railing as she watched the impossible sight unfold before her eyes. A massive ship, larger than anything in the colonial fleet, descended through the atmosphere like a falling mountain of black metal and pulsing red veins. "Ma'am, we're picking up energy readings unlike anything in our databases," reported Lieutenant Torres, his voice tight with barely controlled fear. The young officer had seen pirates, corporate raiders, even rogue military units, but nothing had prepared him for this. The ship's hull seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting as if it were alive, while streams of crimson light flowed across its surface like molten blood. Elena had spent 15 years protecting this colony, watching over 3,000 miners and their families who had made this barren rock their home. They had carved life from stone, built communities in the shadow of alien mountains, and now something beyond their comprehension had come to their world. The ship settled into the valley below with surprising grace for something so massive, its landing creating tremors that shook the foundation of every building in the colony. From the ship's belly, a ramp descended with the sound of grinding metal. What emerged first was not its pilot, but something that made every human who saw it take an involuntary step backward. The creature stood 12 feet tall, its body a fusion of organic tissue and mechanical components. Its skin was translucent, revealing a network of glowing conduits that pulsed with the same red light as the ship. Where its eyes should have been, there were only empty sockets that somehow still conveyed an intelligence both ancient and terrible. Behind the creature walked a figure that was unmistakably humanoid, but clearly not human. She was tall and lithe, her skin a pale blue that seemed to shimmer in the morning light. Her hair was silver, flowing like liquid metal, and her eyes held the cold depth of space itself. She wore no armor, carried no visible weapons, yet her presence commanded the same respect as a loaded cannon. The colonists watched from their windows and doorways as the pair moved through the settlement's outskirts. The creature's massive feet left deep impressions in the earth, while its companion glided forward with fluid grace. They moved with purpose, but not with the urgency of conquerors. There was something almost resigned about their approach. Young Thomas Chun, barely 16 and full of the curiosity that had driven his family to the outer colonies, found himself unable to look away. While others hid behind reinforced doors and glass shutters, he stood in the open doorway of his family's HAB unit, studying the visitors with the intensity of a scholar examining a fascinating text. His parents called his name in hushed, urgent tones, but he remained transfixed. The alien woman noticed him first. Her gaze swept across the settlement and settled on the boy, who stood alone while everyone else cowered. She raised her hand, and the massive creature beside her came to an immediate halt. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other across the dusty street. The alien who commanded forces beyond imagination, and the human boy who refused to hide from the unknown. "Zara," the creature spoke, its voice like the rumble of distant thunder. "The small one does not flee." The words were in perfect standard, though spoken with an accent that suggested vocal cords never meant for human language. The alien woman, Zara, tilted her head slightly. In her travels across the galaxy, she had seen countless species react to their arrival. Some fought, some fled, some tried to bargain. But this human child simply stood and watched, as if he were trying to understand rather than survive. It was ... unexpected. Thomas took a step forward, his young mind processing what he was seeing. The creature was clearly powerful, possibly dangerous, but there was something in its posture, in the way it stayed close to the woman, That reminded him of the colony's guard dogs, loyal, protective, but not inherently aggressive. And the woman herself, despite her alien features, carried herself with a weariness that spoke of long travels and difficult choices. "You're not here to hurt us," Thomas said, his voice carrying clearly in the morning air. It wasn't a question. Zara's eyes widened slightly at the boy's words. In her 300 years of existence, she had been called many things: destroyer, conqueror, the herald of endings. But never had someone looked at her and seen past the fear to recognize the truth she carried like a weight upon her shoulders. The creature beside her, known across the galaxy as the Void Render, shifted restlessly. Its biomechanical form was built for destruction, engineered by a long-dead civilization to end wars by making them too terrible to fight. "You speak strangely for one so young," Zara replied, her voice carrying the musical quality common to her species, the ethereal. "What makes you think we mean no harm?" Thomas considered her question seriously, his eyes moving between Zara and the Void Render. "Because you're standing in the open, where everyone can see you. If you wanted to hurt us, you would have done it already. And ... He paused, studying the creature more closely. "Your friend there looks tired." The observation struck Zara like a physical blow. The Void Render was tired, exhausted from centuries of being used as a weapon, of being feared and hated, of being unable to choose its own path. She had found it on a battlefield, damaged and abandoned, and had spent decades learning to communicate with it, to understand that beneath its terrifying exterior lay something that was, in its own way, gentle. "I am Commander Elena Voss," came a voice from behind them. The colony's leader approached with careful steps, flanked by 2 security officers. "This is my colony, and I need to know your intentions." Elena's training told her to maintain distance, to treat any unknown entity as a potential threat, but the boy's calm demeanor and the alien's non-aggressive posture suggested this might be a first contact situation rather than an invasion. Zara turned to face the commander, her expression becoming formal. "I am Zara of the Ethereal Collective, and this is my companion, who your people might know as the Void Render. We are ... She paused, searching for the right words. "Refugees, in a sense. We seek only a place to rest and resupply before continuing our journey." The security officers tensed at the mention of the Void Render's name. Stories of the creature's destructive capabilities had spread throughout human space. Tales of entire fleets reduced to drifting debris, of planets scarred by its passing. But looking at it now, standing quietly beside the alien woman, it seemed more like a weary guardian than a weapon of mass destruction. "The Void Render," Elena said carefully. "The reports we've received suggest it's responsible for significant military losses across multiple sectors." "Reports written by those who used it as a weapon," Zara replied, her voice carrying a note of sadness. "It was created to fight, programmed to destroy, but it was never given the choice to be anything else. When I found it, it was dying, abandoned by masters who saw it only as a tool." Thomas stepped closer, ignoring the sharp intake of breath from the adults around him. "What did you do?" "I gave it a choice," Zara said simply. "For the first time in its existence, I asked it what it wanted rather than commanding it what to do. It chose to follow me, not as a weapon, but as a friend." The Void Render's massive head turned toward the boy, and when it spoke, its voice was softer than before. "The small one has kind eyes, like hers." It gestured toward Zara with one of its massive clawed hands. "Others look at me and see only death, but some see more." Commander Voss found herself in an impossible situation. Every protocol demanded she treat these beings as hostile until proven otherwise, but the evidence before her suggested something far more complex. The colony's sensors had detected no weapons lock, No aggressive posturing, no signs of an impending attack. Instead, she saw an exhausted traveler and her companion, seeking nothing more than a brief respite from their journey. Why here? Elena asked, why this colony? Zara's expression grew distant, her gaze turning toward the stars visible in the morning sky. Because this is the edge of known space. Because here, perhaps, we can find peace for a while. My companion has been hunted across the galaxy by those who would use it, and I— She paused, vulnerability creeping into her voice. I am tired of running. The wind picked up, carrying with it the scent of the alien flowers that grew wild in the colony's hydroponics gardens. For a moment, the scene was almost peaceful. An alien woman and her companion, standing in a human settlement, while a boy bridged the gap between species with nothing more than curiosity and compassion. But in the distance, beyond the planets, atmosphere, ships were already moving. The Void Render's unique energy signature had been detected, and those who had lost fleets to its power were gathering for what they believed would be the final confrontation. 3 days had passed since Zara and the Void Render had arrived at the colony, and the initial fear had given way to cautious curiosity. Thomas had become an unofficial ambassador, spending hours with the visitors while his parents watched nervously. From their hab unit, the boy had a gift for asking questions that cut straight to the heart of things, and both Zara and her companion found themselves opening up in ways they hadn't expected. Does it hurt? Thomas asked, sitting cross-legged on the ground near the Void Render's resting place. The creature had chosen a spot on the colony's outskirts, where it could see the stars and not feel trapped by human architecture. The Void Render's biomechanical form shifted slightly, the red conduits in its transparent skin pulsing with what Thomas had learned was the equivalent of a sigh. Always, it replied in its rumbling voice. The modifications were not meant for comfort, small one. They were meant for efficiency. Zara, who had been repairing a damaged component on her ship, looked up from her work. The civilization that created it believed that pain would make it more aggressive, more effective in battle. They were wrong about many things. What were they right about? Thomas asked, his young mind always probing for the complete picture. That it was capable of incredible things, Zara said, setting down her tools. But they only saw its capacity for destruction. They never realized it could create as well. To demonstrate, the Void Render extended one of its massive hands toward a patch of barren ground. Energy flowed from its palm, but instead of the destructive force that had leveled battlefields, it was something else entirely. The soil began to change, minerals rearranging themselves into patterns of crystalline beauty. Within moments, a small garden of glowing crystal flowers had sprouted from the earth. It's beautiful, Thomas breathed, reaching out to touch one of the delicate formations. Why don't you show people this instead of ... the other thing? Because no one ever asked, the Void Render replied simply. They saw a weapon and demanded destruction. They never asked what else I might be capable of. The sound of approaching footsteps drew their attention. Commander Voss was walking toward them, her expression serious but not unfriendly. She had spent the last 3 days reviewing everything they knew about the Void Render, cross-referencing reports with what she had observed, and the conclusions she had reached were troubling. Zara, she said, stopping a respectful distance. Away. I need to speak with you about something important. The ethereal woman rose gracefully, her silver hair catching the light. You've received word from the outer system. 3 battle groups, Elena confirmed. They're converging on our position. Military forces from the Centauri Alliance, the Neo-Terran Federation, and the Outer Rim Collective. They're all coming for your friend. The Void Render's form began to glow more brightly, its defensive systems automatically responding to the threat. I will not let them harm the colony, it rumbled, its voice taking on a dangerous edge. No, Zara said firmly, placing a hand on the creature's massive arm. "We will not bring war to these people. We will leave." "Where will you go?" Thomas asked, his voice small. Over the past 3 days, he had grown attached to the unlikely pair. They had answered his questions, shared their stories, and treated him not as a child, but as a friend. "There is nowhere," Zara admitted, her composure finally cracking. "Every system, every world, every station in known space has been warned about us. We are hunted wherever we go, not for any crime we have committed, but for the fear of what we might do." The injustice of it struck Thomas like a physical blow. He had seen the Void Render's gentleness, its careful movements around the colony, its delight in creating rather than destroying. He had watched Zara tend to her companion's injuries with the devotion of a sister, had heard her speak of her dreams of finding a place where they could simply exist in peace. "What if they didn't have to find you?" Thomas said suddenly, his young mind racing with possibilities. "What if you became something else?" Commander Voss raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "The Void Render is famous because it's a weapon," Thomas explained, his words coming faster as his excitement grew. "But what if it wasn't? What if it was just a really good gardener, or a builder, or a healer? What if people stopped seeing it as a weapon and started seeing it as something helpful?" Zara stared at the boy, her ancient mind struggling to process such a simple concept. "You mean ... rehabilitation? Redemption?" "I mean showing people who you really are," Thomas said, looking between Zara and the Void Render. "Not who you were made to be, but who you choose to be." The Void Render's glow dimmed to a soft pulse, and when it spoke, its voice was filled with something that might have been hope. Could such a thing be possible? Before anyone could answer, alarms began blaring across the colony. The first of the battle groups had arrived, and they were not interested in negotiation. The sky above Kepler 442b filled with the ominous shapes of warships as the 3 battle groups took positions around the planet. Commander Voss watched from the colony's command center as her screens lit up with tactical displays showing dozens of vessels, each one equipped with enough firepower to reduce the settlement to ash. The communications channels crackled with demands for the colony to surrender the Void Render, threats of orbital bombardment, and warnings that they had minutes to comply. "They're not going to listen to reason," Lieutenant Torres reported, his voice tight with stress. "The Centauri Alliance commander is broadcasting on all channels. He's calling for the immediate surrender of what he terms the greatest threat to galactic peace." Zara stood in the command center, her ethereal features calm despite the chaos around her. The Void Render waited outside, its massive form visible through the reinforced windows, its biomechanical systems beginning to glow with defensive energy. 3 days of peace had given it time to rest and repair, but more importantly, it had given it time to remember what it was like to be treated as a being rather than a weapon. "I will not let innocent people suffer from my presence," Zara said, her voice carrying across the command center. "My companion and I will surrender ourselves to prevent harm to your colony." "No," Thomas said, stepping forward despite his parents' attempts to hold him back. "That's not right. You haven't done anything wrong. You've been running from people who want to use you, not hurt you." Commander Voss found herself at the center of an impossible decision. Military protocol demanded she comply with the battle group's demands. But everything she had observed over the past 3 days suggested that the real threat came not from the beings seeking refuge, but from those who pursued them with such relentless determination. "Commander," came a voice from the communications station. "We're receiving a transmission from the Void Render. It's broadcasting on all military frequencies." The massive creature's voice filled the command center, transmitted across space to every ship in the battle groups. "I am the one you call the Void Render. I know why you have come. You believe I am a weapon that must be controlled or destroyed. You are wrong. The transmission continued, the creature's words carrying a weight that seemed to make the very air grow heavy. I was created to be a weapon, programmed to destroy, used by those who saw me only as a tool. But I am more than what I was made to be. I choose to be more. On the screens, the tactical displays showed the battle groups holding their positions, their commanders likely debating how to respond to this unexpected development. The Void Render had never communicated directly with its pursuers before, had never attempted to explain itself or its actions. For 3 days, I have lived among humans who showed me kindness without fear, who asked what I wanted rather than demanded what I could do. I have remembered what it feels like to create rather than destroy, to protect rather than conquer. I will not let you harm them. The creature's form began to change, its biomechanical systems shifting and reconfiguring. But instead of taking on the terrifying aspect of a weapon preparing for war, it began to transform into something else entirely. The red conduits in its skin shifted to blue, then to green, then to a warm golden light that seemed to pulse with life rather than destruction. I offer you a choice, the Void Render continued. You may see me as a weapon and make me your enemy, or you may see me as a guardian and make me your ally. The power that once destroyed can also protect. The strength that once conquered can also heal. Thomas watched in amazement as the creature's transformation continued. Its massive claws retracted, replaced by what looked like delicate manipulator arms. Its armored skin softened, becoming more organic, more alive. The empty sockets where its eyes had been began to glow with gentle light. And when it turned to look at the colony, Thomas saw something in that gaze that he had never seen before. Peace. My God, whispered Commander Voss. It's choosing to evolve. Zara's eyes were wide with wonder and hope. In all my years with it, I have never seen anything like this. It's rewriting its own programming, choosing what it wants to be. The communications channels erupted with confused chatter from the battle groups. Their instruments were detecting massive energy fluctuations from the Void Render, but the readings didn't match any known weapon signatures. Instead, they were seeing something that their computers couldn't categorize a life form in the process of fundamental change. This is Admiral Morrison of the Centauri Alliance, came a voice over the comms. What we're seeing is impossible. Our xenobiologists are saying the creature is undergoing some kind of voluntary genetic restructuring. It's not genetic, Zara said, her voice filled with pride and amazement. It's choosing to become what it was always meant to be. Not a weapon, but a guardian. Not a destroyer, but a protector. The Void Render's transformation was nearing completion. Where once had stood a creature of war, now stood a being of evident peace. Its form was still massive, still powerful, but the menace was gone, replaced by something that radiated calm and protective strength. I am no longer the Void Render, the creature announced, its voice now carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate with the very planet itself. I am the life bringer, the guardian of growing things, the protector of those who choose peace over war. The silence that followed was profound. 3 battle groups, dozens of warships, thousands of military personnel, all faced with something that had never happened before in recorded history, a weapon of mass destruction choosing to become something else entirely. The transformation of the Void Render sent shockwaves through the assembled fleet. Admiral Morrison of the Centauri Alliance found himself staring at sensor readings that defied everything he knew about biomechanical organisms. The creature that had once been responsible for the destruction of entire battle groups was now registering as something his computers couldn't classify, a living being whose very cellular structure radiated peace rather than menace. Sir, reported his tactical officer, the energy signatures we're detecting from the creature are unlike anything in our databases. It's not reading as a weapon anymore. Our systems are classifying it as a terraforming tool. Thomas stood outside the colony's command center, watching in wonder as the being that now called itself the Lifebringer demonstrated its new capabilities. Where the Void Render had once torn apart matter at the molecular level to create devastation, the Lifebringer was using the same fundamental abilities to encourage growth and healing. The crystal garden it had created 3 days earlier was now spreading across the colony's outskirts, transforming the barren landscape into something beautiful and alive. "It's incredible," breathed Dr. Sarah Martinez, the colony's chief scientist, as she took readings from the transformed area. "The soil composition has been altered at the molecular level. It's not just fertile now, it's perfectly balanced for supporting multiple forms of life. The creature has essentially terraformed this entire section in a matter of hours." Zara watched her companion with tears in her eyes. For centuries, she had seen the pain in the Void Render's actions, the way it had been forced to destroy when its nature yearned to create. Now, finally, it was free to be what it had always wanted to be. "Lifebringer," she said, approaching the massive being. "How do you feel?" The creature turned its head toward her, and for the first time since she had known it, she saw something in its new eyes that looked like joy. "I feel ... complete," it said, its voice now carrying undertones that seemed to make the very air around them more alive. "For the first time in my existence, I am doing what I was meant to do." The communications channels crackled with confused reports from the battle groups. The Neo-Terran Federation commander was arguing with the Outer Rim Collective Admiral about how to proceed, while Admiral Morrison found himself facing a situation that had no precedent in military history. "The target has undergone fundamental change," Morrison reported to his superiors. "It no longer registers as a weapon. In fact, our xenobiologists are recommending we study it as a potential solution to the terraforming crisis on Kepler-9. Commander." Voss listened to the increasingly bewildered communications from the fleet with growing satisfaction. "It seems," she said to no one in particular, "that it's hard to justify attacking something that's actively making the galaxy a better place." Young Thomas approached the Lifebringer with the same fearless curiosity he had shown from the beginning. "Can you really help other planets?" he asked. "Make them better places to live?" The massive being knelt down, bringing its new face closer to the boy's level. "I can heal soil that has been poisoned, restore atmospheres that have been damaged, and bring life to worlds that have been considered dead. The same power that once destroyed can now create and nurture. And why are you staying here?" Thomas asked. "There are lots of places that need help." The Lifebringer paused, considering the question. "Because," it said slowly, "I am no longer a weapon that goes where it is commanded. I am a being that chooses where it is needed. And right now, I choose to stay with those who showed me kindness." But even as the creature spoke, reports were coming in from across the galaxy. Worlds that had been devastated by war, planets struggling with environmental collapse, colonies on the edge of failure, all desperate for the kind of help that the Lifebringer could provide. Zara placed a hand on her companion's massive arm. "The galaxy needs what you can offer," she said gently. "And perhaps, perhaps, this is how we find our place in it. Not as fugitives running from our past, but as healers working toward a better future." The Lifebringer raised its head, looking up at the ships that had come to destroy it. "I make an offer to those who would be my enemies," it broadcast on all frequencies. "I offer my power not for war, but for peace. Not for destruction, but for creation. Any world that needs healing, any people that need help, I will come. Not as a weapon, but as a friend." The response was immediate and overwhelming. The communications systems of all 3 battle groups lit up with transmissions from dozens of worlds, each one requesting aid, each one offering friendship instead of fear. Admiral Morrison found himself in the unprecedented position of negotiating a peace treaty with a being that had once been considered the greatest threat to galactic security. "The Centauri Alliance accepts your offer," he said, his voice carrying across space. We welcome you to the community of civilized worlds." Thomas grinned as he watched the ships above begin to change their formations from attack patterns to escort formations. "You did it," he said to the Life-Bringer. "You chose who you wanted to be." The massive being looked down at the boy who had never feared it, who had seen beyond its fearsome exterior to the gentle soul within. "No, small one," it said, its voice warm with gratitude. "You showed me that I had a choice. All beings need someone to believe in them before they can believe in themselves." As the sun set over Kepler 442b, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, the Life-Bringer began its work of transformation. But it wasn't just the planet that was changing. It was the entire galaxy's understanding of what it meant to be powerful, and what it meant to choose love over fear. The greatest weapon ever created had become the greatest force for healing the galaxy had ever known, and it all began with a human boy who chose to see the good in something everyone else feared.